everybody. Hope you're doing marvelously well. I'm sitting here with the rather wonderful Mr. Butch Walker. How are you?
Good, man. So nice to meet you finally.
I know we had some great email exchanges. I have to be honest, you are the most responsive person I've ever, emailed regarding this stuff. I'll email you.
So not rock and roll.
Well, it's probably a test to your success.
Oh, just never liked it to be late.
No, it's just,
growing up.
I really appreciate that because I flew off and went to England for a few days and then came back and was like, oh, I hadn't emailed him in 4 days. Email you in 15 minutes. You're like, yep, here it is. We can do this, this, and this. I love that.
Okay, good. Well, some people might be annoyed by it or think it's not very cool to be responsive, but I can't help it. It's just OCD in me, you know.
I think it's amazing.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a bigger test to your success. Now we're in Ruby Red Productions.
Yes.
And this is the studio.
Yep.
And we've been here a little bit, so I've walked around a bit. I definitely want to get more into the gear. We talked about the console, which has an amazing history. So
yeah, it does.
Nice to get in that. I just noticed you have CC drums there.
Yeah, CNC have been great. Man, they made me a kit. I wanted a Phil Collins dimensions exactly from his mid '80s era Gretches, I guess those were, and wanted
the
a concert toms. Absolutely. Because I've got a million drums that are conventional, so, and also just been really getting into that. Those are the records I loved growing up, all those Elton records and Nigel Olsson and all that stuff being played on concert toms in the studio. And it's like the Clash records that it had. It's like, I don't know, there's something about the, it's instant takes me back there when I sit down and play on them.
Well, off camera, we were talking about the guys that we love, the music we grew up loving, and how it was not formulaic. It was so creative. And so I think you as a multi-instrumentalist and a songwriter and a producer, it's wonderful to have a playground like this where you can, we were talking off camera about different guitars and different, the fact is isn't that sort of the dream as a kid that we're going to be able to get to this position?
Without a doubt. It all started with that 4-track back there, which is sadly not the exact one, but it's one that I learned on in my parents' little antique store that was behind our house growing up in a little wooden shack called the Chicken Coop, and that was their business, and I basically turned it into a little studio, which was basically our rehearsal room with a 4-track. So that was it. I was used to always being in a room this size. Honestly, it was exactly this size, without isolation booths and without fancy, acoustic treatment or anything like that. And certainly those records, those recordings I did back then were not good, but that's how I learned. And there was something always, it was conducive to work whenever everything's just plugged in and ready to go. And being sort of a jack of all trades, I guess, if I can even call myself the jack of it, I at least can get a recording done on by stacking every instrument myself, and I do that a lot on records that I still produce today, where it's like working with, say, like a solo artist or something, where it's just me and that person, and I'm the band, and it's nice to be able to have everything wired up and everything at arm's reach when because I'm hard-headed and like to engineer myself most of the time too, so. Just having it all in one room, I find that it's just so conducive. After years and years of going to, and even having bigger multi-room studios and all that, I'd find myself like running back and forth in the control room and pressing record and running and coming back. And it just made more sense just to go back to having it set up in a one-room setup. And I really like it. I've gotten a lot of work done in here.
Well, it's actually, obviously from this angle, we'll show tons of other angles. It's actually a fairly decent sized room. I mean, You've got the drums over here. I love the fact that it's in the corner. Everything about this, I love the pegboard walls, which we, I was down in the producer's workshop, Clay Blair's space, where they made like tracks from the wall and Bob Ezrin worked in. And I love seeing that, So I suppose the reality is like, did you move into this room? Was it already designed?
No, we built it exactly to this. It was just
fantastic.
It was literally 3 empty garage spaces. I kept one garage space for all my motorcycles and stuff, and then we converted the other garage space into a lounge, which really wasn't a lot of conversion. It was just like drywalling and putting a kitchen in and all that. But this room we we did it sort of right. Like Todd, who's been my assistant for years on stuff, Todd Stapera, he kind of knew the technicalities of I don't know that stuff. So it's like angles on walls and all that shit I couldn't tell you. Like I made records in basements and bedrooms that got on the radio, so I just never questioned it. You know, it's like, okay, no one's told me that it was recorded poorly and it sounds bad. But we went ahead and did this one at least with some of those particulars in mind, some of those technicalities in mind. And, you know, the walls are floated with air gaps and done right, and the ceiling's floated and it's angled. And we wanted high ceilings, so we found this place that would not feel so claustrophobic if it were a room this size with conventional size ceilings. So we found one that had, I would suppose these are 10-foot high ceilings or something. So, but it's been perfect, you know. Like, I don't like it to be super ambient because I want to be able to control it. And it's nice when you set up and record a live record in here. It sounds great. Everybody playing together, believe it or not. Because, I mean, shit, they were making those records at Stax and Motown in rooms smaller than this.
Oh, yeah.
Or even in
office buildings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
low
like
ceilings, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you can't really judge it based on, I think, size. You have to it's got to be all about what's comfortable to you.
Absolutely. And again, we were talking about, you know, how you could take a drum kit now, small dead drum kit, and make it be whatever you want it to be.
Totally. You can make it sound like a Bon Jovi record from '88, or you can make it sound like Nigel Olsson played it, you know, on Yellow Brick Road or whatever. You know, it's like you really have the options now, and technology has afforded us that. And that's a beautiful thing, I think. I think it's nice to be able to have the best of both worlds now, where we can, like, you know, record everything with an analog mindset, but there's so much manipulation that you can do as long as you don't do it the wrong way or suck the life out of it, then it can be to your advantage.
So I'd love to know a little bit of history.
Sure.
So how did you end up here? I mean, you're from Georgia originally, is that correct?
I'm from Georgia. So I grew up in a town called Cartersville. It was about an hour outside of Atlanta. And let's see, I can do this. I'm pretty good at this one, so I'll go quick with it. But I saw my first concert. I begged my parents to take me to see Kiss in '77 when I was 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
Changed my life, obviously, because the circus sucked after that. It was like, you know, this was the circus. I wanted in on this. I wanted to be this. And I know you've worked with Ace Frehley. Like, that was like my guitar player at the time. Like, that was my guy, you know. So when I saw him do his solo in Shock Me,
sure,
and like his guitar levitated to the ceiling and blew up into sparks, and I always say like 20,000 stoners went nuts, and I lost my mind too. And I was like, I have to do this. I was 8. Wow. It was a benchmark move that my parents actually said yes and took me, because I don't think I'd be here today if that spark hadn't set off in my head that early. And it was really exciting getting into immersing myself into rock and roll, because before that, all I had was reruns of the Monkees, American Bandstand, and the Muppet Show. Isn't that wild that was like this place where you saw the most live music being played, or not even live, canned, but it was performed.
Sure.
Or even pantomimed, and you're just like, this is where I can see somebody holding a Les Paul.
We had the Monkees reruns in England when I was a kid.
You did?
Yeah, and I relate, because now you look back at it and go, wow, that's like Hal Blaine and Carol Kay playing on these records.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Neil Diamond writing the songs, you know, it's like wild. But that being said, it didn't matter if all of these things were actually faux versions of, I mean, the Muppets weren't real, the Monkees weren't really real, you know, it was all prefabricated. And for some reason that didn't matter. It was just, at the time when you grew up in the Bible Belt and rock and roll was kind of sheltered by most families to their kids. And all you had was what you could find on the radio or maybe at the local record store. That was exciting to me. It was like I was on a scavenger hunt for the rest of my life after that, of like, oh, I've got to find bands and music and find my people. And, you know, in Cartersville, it was hard to find your people.
How big a town was it?
It was very small at the time. I mean, you know, I couldn't even tell you how many people were there, but, you know, it was one of those towns that had a red light and had a McDonald's, you know, and a bunch of farms and a little shopping center. And, you know, now it's like 7 times the size and it's a suburb of Atlanta. But at the time, it felt very much like the movie Footloose, where, you know, It was like, the devil's music if you were wanting to get into rock and roll. And my parents, for some reason, who were not hippies and were not like super, they weren't like that. They were just cool. They were like, with this comes responsibility. So, you keep your grades up, you can go out and play clubs, underage 6 nights a week, which is what I was doing in high school. And so I'm jumping up to high school now where like I'm in a metal band at this point, and there's no original bands really allowed. You can't like play originals in clubs. They would only want you to play covers. You'd sneak,
I did the same thing.
Of course you did. So you'd sneak one in every now and again, but even still, I was playing with guys that were all in their 20s. Mm-hmm. And it was like me and a couple other guys that were young in the band. We were still teenagers in high school. And we broke off and formed our own band, had a little like, small town drama wars there. And we had our own band. And these were guys I found in the next town over called Rome, Georgia, because Rome was bigger and there was more musicians that were kids there. So I found my tribe there. And we made we started making demos in my parents' barn on the 4-track and submitted them to get like cover gigs. And we played cover gigs at in Atlanta, and 6 nights a week I'd be playing till 3 a.m. and get home and go to school at 6 a.m., get up at 6 a.m. and do it all over again, and eyeliner running down my face, the only kid with long hair in the high school, and cheerleaders asking, oh, how's your little band doing? Very condescending. And and at the time they didn't realize I was living this pretty raucous lifestyle already, getting really crazy, and then getting up and going to high school the next day and doing it all over again, and not telling my teachers because I didn't want to get in trouble. If there was a way to get in trouble, I guess playing in underage in bars might have got me in trouble.
Right.
And drinking as well at the time, which, sorry that I'm a terrible role model. But we ended up getting tired of playing covers and wanted to be an original band. We were obsessed with LA. We were obsessed with LA bands. We were obsessed with, the shit that was coming out of there at the time, which was blowing everybody's minds, which was, Motley Crue at their height, GNR, the explosion of that whole scene. So it's, kind of the glory days of let's call it the hair farmer movement, right. And we wanted in on it. We wanted to be a part of it really bad. So we saved up as much money as we could from playing the shows in Georgia, and did what 1,000 plus other bands did. Drove cross country, flew across country, moved into LA, straight into Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard in an unair-conditioned apartment with 6 guys in it, and got out on the Sunset Strip with our shitty flyers and just tried to convince.
What was the name of your band?
We were called Bite the Bullet at the time. And
Bite the Bullet, love it.
And then we had to change the name when we got signed, because we ended up getting signed after like 10 months of like playing on the Strip. For some reason, somebody took a chance on us, and we ended up becoming signed to Charisma Virgin. And we ended up having to change the name. So we changed it to SouthGang. And, from there, the story gets long and complicated, and you'll run out of batteries in your cameras. So it's like, we ended up, it was great though. It was the end of the beginning and the beginning of the end.
Was it in that sort of late 80s, early 90s kind of, just that changeover period?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I remember seeing, this is such a played out tale for people that come from that era, but like to use the Nirvana word, but like when I saw Nirvana for the first time, and Alice in Chains, and Smashing Pumpkins, and Pearl Jam especially, that one spoke to me the most. And I was like, this is great. I was like, we have to like get out of what we're doing. I don't think what we're doing is going to really amount to much.
I always felt like, for me personally, Alice in Chains were the sort of gateway drug, because
they were metal, but
exactly.
Yeah, but grunge. I know everybody hates that word, but like, what else do you want to call it?
I have no idea.
Alternative, really, because metal wasn't alternative. Yeah. It wasn't like hair metal and speed metal. Everything else, there was all genres of metal, but alternative was like a new forefront, you know, when you had like 120 minutes and Alt Nation and stuff like that on MTV popping up, where you could see all these bands up at midnight, you know, get played in their videos before they became mainstream. That's where you were seeing videos by, you know, by not Guns N' Roses, but by Alice in Chains and Nirvana. Yeah, I remember they would play like, you know, whatever off of Bleach, and you'd be like, oh, I've seen this band before, you know, and then Smashing Pumpkins, Gish, and all that. And I was really into all that. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to explore more of that, I thought, like, but not like just copy it, you know, because from that point forward, every band I was in after that, we never really sounded like that. We just loved the substance of it, you know, because it felt a little depleted. Like everybody can always, like, you know, all the throwback people that like are married to their, you know, the hair metal 80s roots or whatever, and can't get past it and can't get over it and think that that's the best music there ever was and there'll never be anything better than that. And it's like, I don't agree with that. There was a lot of incredible music starting to bubble up. I didn't resent, like so many people resent that other musical, you know, sounds and influences came along and kind of wiped the floor with that genre. I appreciated it, but I was eager still I was only like 21 years old. I was eager to learn more. I wanted to learn it all. I still didn't know how to do any of this shit great, you know, yet. I didn't know how to like record very well yet. I'm still like learning that too. So
all the best people I know, like you, are always learning.
Always learning. I mean, I watch your videos and learn, you know, it's like there's always something to take away from somebody.
Always learning, yeah.
And that's the wonderful thing about this career path, is that it surprises me every day.
I'm going to be at Abbey Road next week. I'm like a little kid.
So fun.
I leave on Sunday. I'm going to be at Abbey Road for 3 days.
Now,
I'm like a little kid.
How many times have you worked there?
Only a couple of times. But I mean, just
it's
it
magical.
never gets old.
No, it's magical.
Actually, it never gets old going back to Sunset Sound. I've been there about 500 times.
I mean, that's legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, but yeah, Abbey Road, I've gone and done string sessions there for my records and for other people's records. Like I'm saying, like records I produce for others and for myself. I've done I work with this guy, wonderful guy, Rob Mathis, who does a lot of string arrangements for everyone from, you know, he did Bowie, he does Sade, he does Sting, everybody. He's really a musical madman. And he uses the London Symphony at Abbey Road almost exclusively. And so that was my gateway in, was hooking up with Rob and him doing all these like string arrangements on my records, and then him being like, you know, you should come over, you know, and it's like, okay, twist my arm. I'll book a show. I'll go play a show down the road and then be here just sitting on the string sessions. And yeah, it never gets old. It's always goosebumps. Isn't it cool, the history?
Oh, unbelievable.
The history and the output of music that just the Beatles alone did there. I mean, it's so deep.
Plus it's the history of recorded music, because you have Blumlein, I want to say 1931.
Yep.
I'm plucking a year out because from Abbey Road's own Instagram is that they were talking about him the other day, because, you know, he's the godfather or the father of stereo, the first stereo recordings. He came up with binaural. So it's like got this history of just innovation.
Yeah.
You know, from decades even before the Beatles came in there, and then of course the Beatles took it to another level again.
And the room itself, you know, the big room is just so legendary. It's so cool. The air in it.
That spirit of always learning and of being a big kid.
Right, being a big kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that'll ever change. I mean, that's why I come down here 9 to 5 and longer, Monday through Friday, even if I'm not working. I'm still going to come in here, because just being in the room will sometimes, most of the time, spark some sort of creative juice to get going. And you know, I think that's the beauty about, you know, about music, is it's just the more you embrace it, the more you learn from it, and the more it takes you to another place, really.
So I recently interviewed Roger Manning.
Oh, love Roger.
And for me, what what I enjoy about your band, Marvelous 3, and Jellyfish was they were sort of bands a little bit out of their time.
Yeah.
But in a way that when I heard your first single, I thought to myself, you know, this guy listens to the Byrds, he listens to the Beach Boys, he listens to the Beatles, I heard all of those things in that song. Yes, it was a really incredibly well-crafted indie rock song, but I heard all those influences. When I heard Jellyfish, I heard 10cc and Supertramp, everybody goes Beatles, but I heard...
Oh my God, ELO, everything. Yeah.
But that, you know, there's so much more depth to what you were doing then and what Roger was doing, and yeah, it's very, very exciting to me. So it's not surprising to me that you became such a successful producer and a songwriter because, you know, you were sort of out of your time. I mean, in a wonderful
We always
way.
jokingly said 5 years too early and 15 years too late. And like that we felt that way about Jellyfish, which is funny. As a side note, I didn't even get into that they were one of the main reasons that I rethought my life when I was doing hair metal, because we got signed to Charisma Virgin, the other band, Jellyfish. They got signed to Charisma Virgin, same time. And we went to a show of theirs at the Roxy, because we had gotten an advance promo copy of Belly Button, the record. And my bass player, Jace, who's still one of my best friends to this day, who also has a huge effect, you know, he's got a huge affection for, like, you know, harmonies and melodies and all that stuff. So he would always play that in the van, that record, and we'd be listening to it, and I'd be, wow, okay, it's starting to click with this. And then we went to see them play at the Roxy on that first record, and I was forever changed after that. That was it. I was like, we have to be better. We have to be better. We're not that great. We're in a time and an era and a genre that just drinks its own hype so much. Mm-hmm. And we saw these guys, and every one of these guys are singing lead and impeccable harmony, and it sounds like 20 musicians on stage, and it's 4, and the drummer's standing up.
Yeah. And
it's like, and the lyrics were just so good. It was like everything about it, you could just tell that there was something super special there.
It's like, it's interesting because the word that always comes to mind is not applicable, which is like sophisticated. It wasn't sophisticated because that implies like, you know.
It wasn't very...
But it was just so melodic and so strong. But then that's how I felt about your band the first time I heard it.
Well, thanks. And I think maybe that's because we were influenced so much by that, you know. And it kind of let us know that we also could see that a band like Jellyfish was going to have trouble in that world fitting in, because it was super awkward, visually very, you know, interesting, and but even still, it just opened up the floodgates for like wanting to be better musicians, better singers, better lyricists. More importantly, like, I mean, I thought Andy's lyrics were incredible. Like, he was on par to me with a lot of, like, he was channeling some like Elvis Costello big time, and like,
they're huge Elvis Costello fans, yeah.
Huge. Yeah. You could hear it lyrically in a lot of that. And it was sophisticated lyrics over very playful music. So that spoke to me too. I liked that. Made me want to be better at writing lyrics. And
so how did you get to that band? What was you did your hair metal, as you put it?
Yeah. It was really interesting. We were touring with that band, with the hair metal band. We were over in China, and we were touring China and Inner Mongolia and all these, like, it was a really strange trip.
It was a big deal in that period.
It was a big deal. We were the first American rock band to come play China. I mean, that sounds like an awesome achievement, but it really was a disaster. It was terrible. Like, and that's a whole other story, like, as far as like how that went down. We were just basically conned into doing, through a bad manager at the time, to do this like money grab of go over there and play and, you know, do these sports arenas where when you're dangled that carrot in front of a early 20-something kid's face and saying that you're going to play arenas, that's something you can't do in the States. We never did and never would. So, we were playing shitty clubs in America. And so we were told we'd go over there and play arenas and it would be great. And we were gullible and we took the bait and we did it. And we were also told it'd be a lot of money. And, we were going to get like the first half of it up front and then the second half when we finished the tour. And we did it. And our label was like, please go, because they were just get this band out of our hair because we drove them crazy
Right.
about, saying stupid shit like, when are we going to be famous? Because we didn't know anything. We were just learning as kids. We were just young, dumb kids from Rome, Georgia and Cartersville, Georgia, and didn't really know what was happening. So we went over there and realized very quick that it was a mistake, and the shows were a disaster. The accommodations were a disaster. It was extremely communist. So there was a lot of, it was very repressive, like as far as the people were, not allowed to, they weren't allowed to be on the floor. So we had to set up almost like in the round, like with the stage on the floor. And then everybody would be in the bleachers, and that'd be the closest person to us would be 50 feet away. And they weren't allowed to stand. They weren't allowed to yell. There was like armed MPs on every row. And you would get done with the song and it would just be sophisticated clapping and, the occasional yelp, but like nothing. It was so not rock and roll, obviously. So we were and here we were playing like metal. It's like super weird. And being asked to like, can you play the national anthem from China, or like they would want us to play like all these like patriotic songs that are Chinese songs, and we're like, we're not monkeys on display here. We were just learning a lot about everything and what was wrong and what was right and what to do and what not to do. And we ended up one of the last shows. It was the second to the last show. And we were supposed to go, we were playing this little town. It was, I think it was called Jilin. And we played, it's the first time we played in a smaller arena, and they allowed everyone on the floor. They let them sit on the floor. So everybody's sitting cross-legged on the floor. But that was enough because we were excited. We were like, man, we've been playing for 6 weeks over here with no vibe, no feeling of connection to anyone. And they let these people 5 feet from us, finally sit on the floor. Well, we ran with it, and we made that show extra nuts, and we were running out in the audience and getting in the people's faces and interacting, and they started interacting back, and they started like throwing money and jewelry and candy and stuff on stage. It was weird, dance. It was one of those weird things. But they were into it. And then they started charging the stage, and then they would come up on stage, guys and girls, grabbing, trying to literally like take our hair, and like kissing us and ripping our hair, and it was wild. It was like 5 minutes of Beatlemania for a band that meant nothing, and in a very small, town in China.
But they'd never seen or heard anything like it.
No, and so from my recollection is they tear gassed the place.
Oy.
And put us in a van and sent us off very quickly. People chasing the van. So we thought that was fun. We were like, this is awesome. Like, this is rock and roll. It's the first chance we've gotten to have anything remotely rock and roll. But it wasn't really rock and roll. It was really sad. And it was really because there was like, people were getting hurt, and because they were wanting to have a good time. Mm-hmm. And we woke up on the train the next morning at the airport in Beijing, and they were done with us. And they sent us packing. And by sent us packing, pre-internet, pre-cell phones, pre-anything, they basically had our gear. It was nowhere to be found. Couldn't find the translator, couldn't find the tour manager, couldn't find anybody representing us. They just had plane tickets sitting in our seats and sending us home, which means we weren't going to get paid, because the first half of the money that we got at the beginning before the tour all went to managers and lawyers because they all took it off the top. So we were relying on the back half. So we got sent home. Our gear was nowhere to be found. This is a great part of the story. 2 of our crew guys, these were guys that literally had never even done road crew before at all. One of them moved from Rome, Georgia with me out to LA. I taught him how to string guitars, everything. And he was my sidekick forever. And the other guy was our bass tech, and it was his first gig ever too. And we were freaking out because our gear was gone. It was 30 hours back at the next town, like nowhere to be found. And we didn't think they had any plans to send it back either, which they didn't. So our crew opted, our 2 guys decided they would stay behind and track the gear down and come back and get it back home. And they did, on top of literally it was 14 hours on top of all these road cases full of gear and expensive guitars and amps from the States that we had over there in the back of horse trucks, crazy, third world shit, right? And then they get to the airport and they ride home on top of it in a cargo plane from China to America, to LA.
Wow.
Sleeping on the road cases in the back of a cargo plane just to make sure our gear got back. So if that gives you an idea of the character of these guys.
Yeah, that's amazing.
My guitar tech, Larry, is one of the most successful guitar techs in the business to this day. He was Ace Frehley's guitar tech for years on the Kiss tours, Cheap Trick, Pearl Jam, you name it. He went on to be, I haven't afforded him in 20 years. And then, and Robert, the bass tech, he's been Kiss's production manager for 20 years.
That's amazing.
So it's these guys, they showed from the get-go how bad they wanted their passion for their job.
Absolutely unbelievable. Incredible.
And they've won because of it. So that was a long way around. Sorry, I probably drained your batteries.
One of the reasons why I do this is to talk about the things that people should know. It's not always necessarily what people want to know.
Sure.
I know that some of the most successful YouTube videos are I hate this, I hate that, why this sucks. And they're the ones that get all the millions of views. And
right.
Even some
so-and-so reacts.
Yeah, and it's all, there's a bigger picture thing in life. And that was such an amazing story.
Well, and thank you, but I meant for it to answer your question, and I did everything but that.
No, you answered the question beautifully.
But while we were over there, we decided band.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
We broke the band up while we were there, basically, and planned our future with me and the other 2 guys, which was the guys that would be in Marvelous 3.
Amazing.
And so,
which is a great name, by the way, Marvelous.
Yeah. Well, my English friend Ian is the one who named the band, because I was sitting at a bar.
There you go.
I was sitting at a bar going, I need a new name for our side project, because we had it was going to be a side project at the time, just like a little fun power pop garage rock spin-off band, and he's the one who came up with the name, and it sounded great coming off of his accent, rolling off his tongue. So I was like, oh yeah, that's great. We're going to definitely name it that,
No, I love that story. These are the kind of things that I love. I remember talking to Tommy Vicari, who told me that for 3 years he worked in the mailroom at Capitol Records because he couldn't get a gig in the studio, because in the 60s everybody was applying to work at Capitol Studios because the Beatles and
right.
every major artist, Sinatra was recording there. So that was his way in, because he'd go down and deliver the mail. And then at night, after his 9-to-5 job, he would sit there in the room and assist for free. And after 3 years, they go, oh, the assistant didn't show up. Do you want to assist tonight?
That's how it works, right?
Yeah. And
that was Jerry Finn at Conway, I think.
Jerry did the same thing?
Yeah. Which he was one of my idols, I learned so much from that guy before he passed, on how to make records and how to actually mic shit properly and do all that.
His guitar sounds on Dookie, you're like,
oh. Yeah, and I never learned how to do that. I just kind of threw mics up and went, and he taught me just signal chains and things like that I didn't really even think about or know how to do.
All right, so we've done a lot of band discussion and influences, all of which is fantastic. But what was the transition now from singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist? Obviously, you're producing your own stuff, and that's how you got signed with Marvelous 3. But how does that turn into where we are now?
Every record I've gotten to do as a producer for someone else's was always based on my own recordings of my own stuff. And so I guess that was kind of cool that like Marvelous 3 was not only a great moment in time for us musically as for being in a rock band and everything, but it was a big catalyst for me because it caught the attention of the industry, I suppose, that at the time still had, were heavily in charge of the, A&Ring of projects and picking producers and paying for them.
Right.
So people would call me and go, "Hey, you had this song, on the radio, like who wrote that?" "Oh, I did." "Who produced it?" "Oh, I did. Recorded it in my bedroom." And it just became a thing where people started using that as like "Oh, well, why don't you come do this for our artists?" And so we ended up I got a lot of work because of that. I got people starting to call me to make records for other folks. And I guess one thing led to many others. And that's why I'm still doing it.
Were you getting people to call you to co-write, then you're producing the tracks that you're co-written, and then they're like, "Oh, this could be on the album," with the quote-unquote demo production suddenly is like,
yes. Yeah, there was never really a mindset of do demos. It was always, I know that too. It's like you go in and you just record it, and a lot of times that ends up being what you use because it's just
unbeatable.
It's got a thing.
Yep.
And it's not about perfection. It's about the fact that it's just not going to be able to be recaptured in that spirit. And so, I'd get called it was always kind of just like a, different scenario every time. It was like, come produce or come write, come produce and write, Sometimes I'd go in and I would be only there to write a song and they'd be already doing the record with another producer. And
right.
I'd have to kind of just sit back and go like, bite my lip and be like, okay, ship off the baby to, be dressed by somebody else.
Right.
But 9 times out of 10, it always worked out where I would always end up being the producer on something that I was brought into, either co-write on or whatnot. But I guess that's kind of how it all transitioned, really.
What was the sort of trajectory? What was it? Could you, I know it's a difficult question, but can you pinpoint like one of the early successes that kind of snowballed?
Yes, indeed. I had done my record, I'd done that Marvelous 3 record, and the song had started taking off. A&R guy for a band that had just gotten signed as well, that were called SR-71. And their A&R guy was like, we want a song like that. Can you come help us get a song in that spirit as Freak of the Week? And singer had an idea and had like a chorus melody and a demo, and we got together, finished writing it, finished coming up with it. And again, this was a scenario where I had not established myself yet as a go-to producer yet. So it was really hard to sell myself on going, I should produce this. So the A&R guy ended up producing it. Yes. So, which the song ended up being a top 5 hit. And then all of a sudden from that and the Marvelous 3, when I was getting calls to work on records for like Avril Lavigne for her second record that was yet to be recorded. Same thing. I came in and co-wrote 3 songs with her early on in the process. Never heard back for like months and months and months. She's already in the studio making a record with whoever's the hot new person at the moment, which was still not me yet. And I ended up, getting a call from her months later saying like, oh, well, everybody really likes the 3 demos you did. the best out of all the stuff we're doing. So maybe we could do some more and like, work, finish up those demos to be the recordings. And that's exactly what they were. All three of those songs were the demos that became the recordings. And one of them was my first like #1 song ever.
Amazing.
And that was My Happy Ending. And then the first single also was a song that was a song that I did not write on, but I produced with her. And so that all just started this little ball rolling of, and I had just gotten off the road with disbanding Marvelous 3, and we'd broken up because our label was a mess and we were a mess, and we were burnt out from touring. I mean, the same three guys had been playing together since I was 16 years old, 15 years old. And we had been touring for 10 years straight, 200 shows a year. So we were burnt. And I just kept thinking how it'd be nice to be home and maybe make some records for a while, even not my own, just for other people. And so I just think timing, it was just great timing for everything, for me to step back from being an artist and get my head out of my ass and thinking the world revolved around me, and try to like take in, other people's careers and try to help them.
Well, you have a special talent for never being formulaic.
Okay, good.
You always there's always art and interest in it. And I can tell from your influences, that's probably a big reason why.
Good.
So I imagine artists are going to fight for you if you've done the demos, because they're going to feel like, oh, he gets what I'm doing and he's giving me some art. Because I think that's the biggest thing when you sit down, isn't it, with artists to potentially produce them, is yes, they want the huge success.
Yeah.
Of course, they want to have that. But they also want to be credible. They want to be in the same conversation as a Bob Dylan, as opposed to a conversation of I'm not going to pick a particular artist.
It's okay. It's a pipe dream for all of us to walk away with this respected artist.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to just be considered a pop commodity. But yes, it's pretty. It's a fine line to toe, and especially being an artist like myself, like as far as like that's first and foremost, my main goal is obviously not to be a huge artist, just to be an artist. Yeah. I don't care about being successfully famous, big selling artist. I just want to always be an artist, because I feel like the minute you lose sight of that or lose touch with that, then maybe you're making records for other people for all the wrong reasons. And sometimes that bites me in the ass, because I'll tend to get more precious with it than I should. And that's a tough lesson to learn, of like, maybe I should let go of the fact that lyric is too simple, or it's too broad, or too general, or whatever. Maybe I should let go of the fact, because I'm not singing it, someone else is. And also they're singing it to millions of people potentially, not just hundreds that would only relate to this weird little quirky song over here that like I like. But there was a lesson to be learned in that, as far as like trying to make sure that everything was broad enough, for audiences, and not be so concerned with shooting yourself in the foot with your own clever gun too much. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which I've done many times, and try not to get into the habit of doing that on other people's records unless they want that.
But that self-awareness is what makes you work.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that push and pull of all the records we grew up, love it.
Yeah.
Very few are like, oh yeah, they had a couple of weeks off. They went in the studio and Sgt. Pepper's.
Right.
It was like, went in the studio, fought for what they believed in, argued it out, tried 50 different ideas. I mean, that's, of course there are exceptions to that. But ultimately, great art comes out of passion. It doesn't usually come out of like, let's just lay on the beach. And,
right, not everything's the perfect storm, like when you're making a record. It's just, sometimes it can take, the struggle can be very real with trying to achieve greatness, and then that comes harder and sometimes easier for certain records.
One of my measures of great production is diversity.
Okay.
And you have a lot of that.
Well, when you have a lot of influences, why would you not want to use them? Why would you not want to explore them? I mean, sure, you have to be careful not to give a band an identity complex, like a crisis where like no one knows what it is. There's a certain amount of staple that needs to be there. But I always hated that growing up, making records where everybody thought you had to make the same record all the way through and always had to make the same record every time. Like if you were this band, don't fucking change it. They, how dare you change up the Happy Meal on me, or don't change the Big Mac. It's great the way it is. And it's like, whatever. I mean, that's a stupid analogy, but at the same time, I got tired of not being able to explore my Stones roots, my Queen roots, my Bowie roots, my my you name it. You know what I mean? I mean, Alice Cooper, anything, like all these like people that you can pull from, and they're examples in their own right of guys that never made the same records twice.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's like, why should they be the only ones allowed to have that kind of fun? You know?
And sometimes, I mean, all those bands have records where there isn't even the same genre in 10 songs.
That's right. I mean, you look at even bands in the 90s that were redefining their genres a little bit. Like you have the Beastie Boys and Beck and groups like that, artists like that just never did the same thing really twice and always were growing as artists and wanting to always challenge themselves and challenge the listener. I love that. Queen were a shining example of that.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought up Queen first.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's always the joke.
The Q word.
There's at least 2 or 3 comments. Oh look, Queen. Warren mentioned Queen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always use The Game as the example for me because
it's such a song too.
Yeah, the album is 1980, which is not really a very sexy year. It's not punk rock. It's the beginning of the 80s, but that one album has Crazy Little Thing Called Love, which some people in America thought was an Elvis cover.
Yeah,
when it
amazing.
Came out. Then you've got another one, Bites the Dust, and it's pure blown disco.
Yep.
And then you've got classic Queen like Save Me and Play the Game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got like almost metal with Dragon Attack.
Crazy. It's so good. And I mean, that's a band that could get away with it because Freddie just got out on the stage and said, watch this.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. That confidence was amazing. But yeah, it was a tough era. In 1980, early 80s, like all the great 70s bands were having identity crises because the 80s were a new crop, a new breed, new technology, new everything. They're all like, how do we fit in? What do we do? What do we sound like? And that was a band that never really fit in to begin with. Mm-hmm. I mean, you saw the reviews, like even in the movie, like all the reviews of when their first albums came out, critics panned them. They hated them. They were like, this is pompous bullshit. And it's like, look, who's laughing now?
Yep.
Like you look at it back now and it's like, people aren't making movies about, people that were boring.
Yep.
If they are, good on them, but like it's like most of the shit is is something that was exciting and taking risks. So and in music, I mean, whatever, I don't know that I do that when I make records. It's hard to take risks for other artists when there's a team of people with lots of cooks in the kitchen overanalyzing it and equating songs to pie charts and graphs, but you still want it to stand out a little bit and be a little bit different from everything else out there.
Well, I think you're in a great position because you are genuinely talented as an artist that you're going to get a respect level. So you're probably pushing the boundaries a little bit more, I think, than.
Oh, thanks. Well, you definitely try,
Yeah, I mean that really honestly because I know what it's like to hang with people that have 1 or 2 really good talents, and that's great.
Right.
But they can be manipulated to, we want it to be more like this.
Mm-hmm.
But you're a very easy to talk to person, so you're going to get an A&R guy who's going to have be a friend with you, and you're going to also be able to back it up with actual results.
Well, thanks. We always say the best thing to do is just make it always sound like always try to make everybody feel like it's their idea, right. Even if it's yours. Convince them that it's their idea, and then you can, and then everybody wins. Because we can always end up we can try something and go like and make them think that, oh wow, I'm glad I thought of that.
I definitely agree. So I'd love to know, because you know, we're probably an hour in here, but there may be people that don't know your discography as production. So you went Avril Lavigne.
Yeah.
And then where did it?
Well, it's weird because, you know, I started out doing metal records, and then next thing you know, you do one hit for a pop teen, you know, girl, and then all of a sudden everybody wants you to do pop teen girls. And then everybody thinks, oh, you're that guy, you know, you're the pop teen girl guy, you know, and it's like, well, not really. I actually just did it because I thought it would be fun, and it was. And so, but then I started working, you know, after that, I did some singles for Katy Perry on her first record, and then I did some singles for several others. And then Pink, I did many songs on many records with her. We established a really great working relationship and like friendship. So it's like
she's a phenomenal singer.
And person, just like, yeah, one of the best. And I guess from there, you know, it was always just this. I do have to go back and talk about a record I did because it flies under the radar with a lot of people, but it did get me a lot of work, and it was a great record for me to work on. Was this band that was out of Atlanta where I was, that were coming up, and they were called Injected, and I did their record, and that was one of the first records I ever did producing, like with the Island Records budget, you know, Rich Costey mixing. It was that record. It was a super, like, it was a heavy rock record. So to go from that to Avril Lavigne and Katy Perry, and then back to Seven Dust, and then back to
Seven Dust.
Yeah.
That was a band I was trying to think of the
Another
other day.
Atlanta band.
Amazing band.
Friends of mine from.
Oh, you know them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love that band.
Well, they were in a hair metal band back in the day too. Some of those guys in Atlanta. So we all knew of each other and came up in the same scene.
I toured in a band in the late '90s, and we played. My band toured and opened for Godsmack as they were exploding.
Okay.
And I got to be friends with Godsmack, and I haven't spoken to Sully in years, but I was like, oh, you know, I love what you're doing. And Sully, quite self-effacing at the time, and goes, oh yeah, we're just kind of pretty good version of Seven Dust. And I was like, what? He was very, very humble about it.
Yeah.
And then I went to a show, it must have been about 2000, and it was Seven Dust, Godsmack, and Stained, and that English band with the girl singer with the shaved head.
Skunk Anansi?
Skunk Anansi, yeah.
Wow.
Skunk Anansi. And Seven Dust, I think, were the headliners, and they were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
One of the greatest live bands.
So you did an album with them?
I did.
I didn't know that. I missed that.
Yeah, called Seasons. And it was just kind of like long overdue, right, because we had not gotten a chance to work together, and we were friends all along, like just Atlanta brothers, and still still love those guys. And then I jumped back to pop punk, you know, and was doing everything from Simple Plan to Bowling for Soup to whoever at the time, and then back to Saosin, and then like back to God, who else? It was all
Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, Fall Out Boy came along eventually after that long time. Never shout never. Hot Shell Ray, yes.
I texted him yesterday.
Thank you, because I don't remember shit. I can't remember what I've done yesterday.
What did I text you yesterday? I was like, this is where we're filming.
I think you'll like him.
That's what I said.
Well, I did. And thank you for reminding me about those records. I loved working on those, and then got into doing some Panic at the Disco records and Weezer, and then you know, it's all kind of just been. It's all over the map, but I love that. You know, like I wouldn't want to do.
I love that about you. I think
I wouldn't want to do just one style record. Just did the new Rob Thomas record, and I loved working with Rob.
I haven't seen Rob in 20-something years. I was in a band called
Still killing it.
Star 69, and we toured with them for a couple of months.
You did?
Yeah, and this was really early on, so we played a couple of markets where I think, because that first album took like a year or two to take off, I think we did a couple of markets where they actually opened for us.
Oh, wow.
Which is hilarious now.
That's funny.
In Matchbox 20 days, and he was such a sweet guy.
So we made a record, which was awesome. You know, it's just like, it's very adventurous for him, that record. And then Andrew McMahon, and I did his last record, just a lot of Matt Nathanson's last record. You know, it's been fun, man. I've been having a lot of fun working on people's stuff and trying not to kill their career in the video game of life called Pro Tools, you know.
The video game of life.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
That could be the quote.
Yeah. Did a great record for a Nashville artist called Raylan Baxter people have been really loving. And that record was really fun. That was like, we did that all live in here. And new Elizabeth Cook record's coming out soon, who's also kind of a outlaw country girl out of Nashville.
So you're a great example. I hope it doesn't come off too fanboyish, but you're a great example of being able to straddle all the things that we were talking about off camera a second ago. This idea of knowing when to bend in which direction. Like, you know, Panic at the Disco, it's concussive, Seven Dust is smash you over the head, but then throw up an acoustic guitar and have a song that breathes and tempo-wise does whatever it wants to do. To me, that is great production. There shouldn't be a style like, oh, I do records that sound like this. You know, it's
you know, we've been obsessed with how to make these records our whole life. That's our job, and it's not work. It's like it's constant exploration, and I love that. I love being able to figure out like how they made records for, you know, Tom Waits and Elton John and all that back in the day, and then also like, you know, making a Trevor Horn production and how like the precision and the technology influence on all that stuff. Like all that stuff matters to me. I mean, and it's just always fun. It's like having to do a new thesis every week. You know, it's like I never went to college. So it's like, I'm still going to college right now. I'm still learning and still going like, oh, I'm applying every one of like my hardcore music nut, you know, influences to being able to actually get to point B with that production wise and go like, oh, I know how to make it sound like that too. And I know how to I know what guitars are used on this. I know what synth is used on that. I know what drum kit was used on that and blah, blah, blah. That's just all part of the fun, you know? It's what makes the ride more interesting.
Well, let's do a little 20 minutes of gear talk. Why not?
Sure.
Let's talk some gear here.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, as a guitar player, can I start off with the guitars?
Of course. We have a lot more where this came from, but this is just some that are out right now. So I don't know where you want to start.
Well, there's a couple, because we actually, off camera, went to this.
Pull anything down you want, obviously.
Strangely enough, even though there's lots of beautiful Fenders and Gibsons, I actually gravitated towards this first.
That thing rules. It's a Yamaha SA2200. Fully custom from them. They only made them in like a sunburst finish, typically. And so what I did is I took, they actually let me, they painted it cream white for me, which I was like extremely stoked on how it came out, because I always loved that color and love these guitars. They're just like, they're like the best part. They're like the best thing about
the neck is gorgeous.
335 on crack, right? I mean, you know, I love 335s and nothing against them, and I've had several of them. But this is like my workhorse. I take this on the road and play it, and it does everything. It's coil tapped. I can like make it sound like a Strat, a Tele. I can make it sound like a Les Paul or 335 or whatever. I like where all the switches are. Yep. It's got a completely different bridge tremolo on it. It's a Duesenberg tremolo actually, which I love their guitars too, and I have several of them. And this has just been a super fun guitar for me. I can tell I've worked it on just already 2 tours. I beat the shit out of my stuff live. So it's
the neck is unbelievable.
The neck is great, and it sounds insane. It sounds like the best block of wood I've ever heard. This thing, it's really a monster.
Gorgeous, and it's interesting how it jumps out at you as soon as you walk in.
yeah, it does. It demands to be seen and heard and played, and I've got a couple other things. The James Valentine model Ernie Ball, which is a great little guitar. That's a fun one.
I didn't know James had his own model.
Yeah, man, Ernie Ball.
He's a sweetheart.
Made him up. And so it's got a cool neck on it, right? Kind of like a little Telecaster neck.
This is light.
It's super light. And then this is one of my favorite tellies that showed up here by mistake one time from Fender, and they just said keep it. And so I was like, okay, I will do so. But it's basically it's a telly custom is what they call the double binding, right?
Yeah.
With the string through the body, and it's one of their custom shop models.
It's gorgeous.
And I've put in the. We're all familiar with Greg Koch, right?
Yeah.
The Weezer guitar player.
Yeah.
So I'm using his gristle tone signature pickup system made by Fishman, believe it or not.
Yep.
These things are amazing, and it's active actually. So this is the weirdest thing is you actually charge the pickups.
Oh.
Right here, but you only have to charge them.
A mini USB.
Yeah, I think it's like something like 3,000 hours or some shit. So you're never really gonna have to redo it. But then this is like a boost switch, like a mid-range boost for this one that turns it more into like a I guess they called it a black or a white, Yeah. But it's great, man. This guitar is a secret weapon, and no hum, no buzz.
Oh, wonderful.
And the tone is great.
Is that 330?
330. This is my 66 330, which I've had for a while, and I really love it.
Oh,
it's pretty
got
sweet.
A real bounce.
Yeah, it does. It's a great guitar.
Oh, and a beautiful light with no block in it. Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
That's gorgeous.
Plays like butter. Again, those are I believe these are the Lindy Fralin hum canceling P90s, because I just hate hum. I'm like, as much as I love P90s and single coils, I get sick of the hum. And these actually sound really big and really good. This is a fun little weirdo.
A Greco.
It's a Greco, 1978. So it's a 78 Flying V, which play that neck. This thing plays great. And these guitars were like,
oh yeah.
These guitars
This is a shredding guitar.
were like a weird, Japanese, really great version of all of the, here we go again, Gibson.
Lawsuit.
Yeah, and so they made some of these that were just incredible instruments back in the late 70s, and they're fun if you can find them. These and the Explorers are really great because they're still neck through, which a lot of them are not, like neck glued heeled. They're like a bolt on a lot of those.
What's that 12-string telly there?
This is a really cool guitar. This is actually you've heard of Nash.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so it might be out of tune. Yep, it is because it's 12 strings. But this is a great little telly thin line made into with a 12-string neck on it. So sorry, it hasn't been tuned in a minute, but it's a really cool guitar. That guitar has been all over the world. We've taken that all on tour many times. But sounds really good. It's fun to track with. Get your Roger McGuinn on big time with it. If you're in a pinch and don't have a Rickenbacker.
Is this Les Paul scale length?
I think so.
It feels a little slightly shorter than a regular telly. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? And then this is we keep in mind, like I said, sounds stupid, but we have twice as many guitars. We just don't have enough stands for them. This one I really love a lot. This is I'm going to have to figure out how to get it out of here.
What is this?
This is a custom shop model they made me. That's it's basically a sprayed over shoreline gold over a sunburst, dual humbucker setup guitar that with a 69 Strat left-handed neck on it.
Oh, I love the finish.
Isn't it great? That neck is so sexy.
Oh,
yeah, it's good.
Gorgeous. It just feels so.
So I take that on the road a lot too. This thing sounds awesome. So this is kind of like my early '82 Lukather guitar. I can shred on it, and still
So nice.
kick out the humbucker and still feel like I'm playing a Strat. You
Got a
know?
Paul Reed Smith there?
Yeah, even this is a great guitar. They actually made this for me. I love the all wood back, the way they did the wood back and sides.
Beautiful.
It's one of the custom 22s. I think that's what they call it. Yeah, and it plays and sounds great. The tremolo stays in tune for being
Big fan of
unlocking.
both Paul and guitars.
Yeah, man, this guitar, it kills. Yeah, they put my initials up there at the top too.
Gorgeous.
Pretty sweet.
He is like such a fan of guitars and
Yep.
music. He can
Yep.
talk for hours about players.
He's a great guy. I'm trying to think of what else I got interesting in here. This is my little Esquire situation here, I believe. It's a custom shop. Again, I took this one on the road. That's a baseball bat neck. Check that out.
Oh, yeah. Woo-hoo!
Yeah,
Look at that.
it is. It definitely, that's like the Jeff Beck, the Beck neck. But it's a fun guitar to play. Pretty sweet.
Yeah, gorgeous.
So I got a lot of more where that came from, and then mostly just I got a bunch of random weird ones we'll pull down. Like I got Mike's. I got like this one's a pretty fun one. I should probably show you this one right here. This is cool. This is my Gretsch White Falcon, which is this was a custom master built one from when Steven, what's his name, was doing these. I hate to call him what's his name. The guy who was doing all the like master built versions for this was one he did for Steven Stills.
Oh,
And
really?
it's the Steven Stills like master built version. Plays and sounds so good. But the story behind this one is that they made it for Neil Young, I guess.
As soon as I saw it, I thought Neil Young.
Well, they made it for Neil to use on, I guess, a CSNY reunion tour that failed to see the light of day because they got into an argument.
Oh.
So old men arguing. So like Neil Young got mad at Steven Stills for something, and they didn't do the tour, and he sent it back. He sent it back and said, "I don't want it," and so I got it.
Oh, it's so
Isn't it good?
slinky.
It's great.
It plays like what you want this guitar to play like.
And it's loud. You plug it in and it's just loud. It's like a caged rat.
It's
Just like yelling at you whenever you plug it in.
such a beautiful neck.
Yeah, great neck. All the details too, they really nailed.
Amazing.
Like all the gold flake on the inside of the F holes and
When I was a kid,
all the checking.
they always used to say, because what was the Neil Young record where he's standing on the front playing it? He's got the pink Cadillac or whatever it is. And,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's pink. I'm probably blanking on the right color, but I remember because I remember going to see him on the Trans World Tour in like 80, and he played one of those. And I remember the legend was, at least for us, was like this was the most expensive guitar in the world.
Oh yeah.
Like it was like $10,000 or something.
Probably, yeah.
Knew they were so expensive.
Yeah, that's what this guitar is now.
Wow.
This is a reissue.
Yeah.
These are like, it's like a $10,000 guitar, I think. But I think I sound terrible, don't I? I'm like,
it's
I don't
okay.
even know how much this costs. But I've had a lot of these guitars for so long. It's a little out of tune, but this is actually kind of my baby because you can see it's been like repaired and so many times and dropped and everything. This is a 62 Hummingbird with a dove tailpiece. So it's like a complete like weird, doesn't even really make sense. But I bought it for $800 off of a rack in Spartanburg, South Carolina. At my buddy's guitar shop.
Spartanburg.
Yeah.
That's a crazy night in Spartanburg.
Yeah.
Whoa, edit.
Spartanburg. And I used it all over the road and wrote every song and every album on it.
It's got what do you got in there? You got a piezo in there or something?
Yeah, I think, there's some sort of, I don't even know what the pickup is in it.
Right.
It's been in there so long, but I don't take it on the road anymore. That's the thing, because I had a fire take everything 12 years ago, and that's like my studio and house and everything. So it was like
That was the house you were renting from Flea.
Yes. And so that was really bad because I went from 40-something vintage guitars and every microphone and everything I'd ever collected my whole life to nothing, and came back from New York City, which is when it happened, with this guitar in the shop.
Right.
Thank God this guitar was in the shop getting fixed. So it was in the shop getting repaired, and I was just like, this is literally the oldest thing I own.
Right.
I don't have anything that I've owned longer than this guitar right here, because it's the only thing that survived the fire.
Amazing.
And so I keep it at home now because I've almost broke it and lost it 100 times.
Is it still your main recording guitar?
I record with it a lot. I do. This is a great little guitar. It's an Epiphone it's a Cortez. And I think it's a 62.
Gorgeous.
And man, it plays and sounds so good. So feel that neck. That's a great neck. You can just play anywhere.
Oh.
And it's also one of those guitars you pick it up strangely and it's always in tune. You know how there's always that one guitar that you pick up and it always is like plays great. No matter.
That sounds not like what I expected when you look at it.
Yeah, and that's capoed 3rd fret. It's actually a really big sounding guitar. So we record a lot with that guitar. That thing it's secret recording weapon for sure.
It's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And then
that's a songwriting guitar as well.
Yeah, and these are all these are guitars obviously I acquired after that fire 12 years ago, just slowly over time. And my sister, who this probably won't be into. No, there.
There's your Nashville tuning. High strung.
So this is LG2 that my sister owned, that after a bad relationship, the best thing she got out of it was a guitar from him. And she kept it under her bed, and I believe it's a 62 as well. And the day after the fire, she sent this to me. And so I cherish this guitar.
That's beautiful.
And I keep it strung because these necks are so, flimsy on these, that like I keep it strung Nashville tuning, and it's just the ultimate layering guitar for that kind of stuff. So that's fun. Little Yamaha 12 string. This is a pretty cool Taylor, actually. Sorry, I'm not very precious with my guitars, but this is one of their newer ones that I just put a pick guard on. And it's, what do they call this one? I think it's the Grand Pacific, yeah. And man, this thing plays and sounds good. I've been using this one too on the road a lot. And then I also have this. This is this thing is great right here, which is they only make a few of these a year. This is a Yamaha LL56.
Yeah.
Which is basically based on, you remember the John Denver guitar they made that had all the like crazy abalone and they.
Oh. Couldn't quite get the warmth in on the lapel mics, but wow. Woo.
It's a really great guitar and a great neck. So Yamaha let me become one of the proud owners of this model, which is like their flagship, top of the line, master built, handcrafted. I love that guitar. It's very, I mean, it's okay to say it's very Martin. And I know all the guitar people will be like, well, just get a Martin. I'm like, I love Martins.
I love Martins too, but
I love this too.
Yeah, I'm a big Yamaha acoustic fan.
I love Yamaha acoustics. Actually, I've been using an old FG 180 and an FG 300, which was the Elliott Smith guitar on all those records.
Yep, exactly.
And I those are not in here, but I have those out there as well in some of the cases, and I use those all the time. And they're great recording guitars.
I've said it many times, and we've been in the room with all the vintage guitars and gone all around, and somebody picks up like a late 70s Yamaha, we put the mic in front of it, we're like, that's the best sounding guitar.
There's no rules.
There's no rules.
There's no rules.
I must say though, the Explorer here, or the Exploder as we used to call them as kids.
I love that. Yeah, man.
Explorer's
that
great.
Thing's great. That's actually just a 2018, I think, 2019, or no, it's actually a 2018 or 2017. Yep. And I just picked it up and was like, you know what? I really been wanting to get an Explorer, and it's a crapshoot to find a good one when they're in the later years, but this one is magic, man. We've been using the shit out of that on records. It sounds insane. So such a heavy. This is a fun little. This is a 62 little nylon string, which I never underestimate the power of a good nylon string guitar in the studio. Falls out of tune very easily. And then we should probably talk about our buddy Scott Baxendale.
We should.
Which
seeing as he brought us all together.
This is my newest acquisition from him, which is a what was this, a H126 or something? I don't know. It's a Harmony Sovereign, you know. And he does a really cool thing, as you know,
He's
where
amazing.
he takes old harmonies and he basically Martinizes them, where he rebraces them, refrets them, resaddles everything. Basically, takes them apart and assembles them the way that they're supposed to be assembled. Because these guitars were
It's a solid top, yeah. They're like good pieces of wood.
Such a great guitar.
Yeah. It immediately sounded like Glenn Campbell there.
Love Glenn.
You know what I mean? It has
Love
that.
Glenn.
Oh,
Yep. It's a big old body. Isn't that dope? Such a cool guitar. You know, they were fabled to be Martin wood.
yeah, which
Scraps.
I can believe.
Like Martin scrap wood, and then Sears and Roebuck just basically had them assembled shitty and sold for $100 in their stores.
Oh yeah, because the braces, the original braces are like almost like an inch wide.
Right.
And then he comes
it's
along.
got all
and-
this nice X bracing underneath now, and I mean, he puts a whole new bridge on them and everything, and nut
machine
and
heads, nut.
I mean,
and he flattens down the neck and everything, refrets them.
they're great. They're like it's like a new guitar that's old and has a soul and
Yep.
and just
Each one he does
sounds
is
amazing.
unique. It's its own thing.
Yeah, I've got 3 of them and I love them. So
I think I have 3.
yeah.
Yeah, I love him. He's such a great guy as well.
Oh yeah.
You like, I saw a photograph of him and I'm like, oh yeah. And then I get him on the phone and he's like, sounds like he's like 21. He's like a little kid. He's so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, he's rad. Yeah, so that's just a few of the guitars, but I mean we've got a lot more, but I won't bore you with that.
So
What else you want to see?
Let's quickly jump over to, I want to talk about the console in a second, but talk about, you got the Sawyers over there for the overhead mics.
Yes, I love them. So I've been working with them now for a few years. I got one of the 017s, and it became just one of my go-to mics for everything, for vocals, room, acoustic guitar, everything.
Yeah.
And then I got into the 011s, which were the little, small diaphragm condenser mics, and that just became my favorite acoustic guitar sound ever.
Right.
And then they preceded that with the 013 tube, which is this. That's these. And
I have one of these, they're fantastic.
and I'm using those as a XY configuration, I guess.
Yep.
Overhead, and man, it sounds so good on drums. So between that and the Bomblet, which is that's this microphone right here, I'm using this as their outer kick mic.
Oh, nice.
And it's just basically like a really badass FET 47,
Yep.
where you get like a lot of great low end and it doesn't fart out, and it can handle the sound pressure. So
Yeah, it reminds me of the Gefell, the CMV 563.
that's right. Yeah.
Which is a favorite mic of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sawyer's a really wonderful company and great guys. And what's that, an RE20?
Everything else is pretty utilitarian. It's RE20 inside the kick. I've got a 57 for the dick mic, which is what we call that.
Right, yeah.
Which is the mic just sitting right over the kick drum, pointed, if it's a male drummer, at his junk, if it's a girl drummer, you can call the mic whatever you want, but it's basically the worst mic is what a lot of people call it, right?
That's what I was about to say, the Wurst, in Germany they call
Wurst.
that, because it's sausage.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, same thing, dick, sausage.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. And then I use 421s under the toms, whatever's available on the floor, which is either 421 or RE20. Nothing technical at all. I mean, most time I'll go overhead, but on the concert toms I'll do them underneath because I'm just going for splat.
Is this a condenser or a dynamic?
It's a dynamic.
Great, because I use SM7 these days.
It's basically an SM57, the Onyx i5. It's a great snare mic and guitar mic, but I mean, I'm just using it as a hi-hat mic because 9 times out of 10 I don't even use a hi-hat mic. Right. But on the last record I've been working on, they wanted a hi-hat mic. So I used it, but I mean, a lot of times I don't even use it.
Because I find I want my hi-hat to go I don't want it to go. Pss, pss, pss.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate that.
And a lot of times it's just the overheads are 80% of my drum sound, so you're picking that shit up regardless. And then snare, I'm using a mic that I've been using for years that I love that is a little unconventional, but it's a great trick I learned from somebody. It's a cow rack.
Oh, wow, cow rack.
So it's a cow rack condenser, and it needs phantom. But man, it's kind of the best of both worlds of
It's very BBC of you.
Yeah.
The BBC use a lot of cow rack mics.
Yeah, I
and
love
stuff.
that mic. It's kind of like the best of like a 57 or a KM 84, like when people do that, or a 251 next to a 80, next to a 57. Instead of using two mics, that mic just sounds like both of them combined. And
451.
451, sorry.
Yeah. No,
not a 251.
I know
that would be
meant.
overkill.
Yeah, I know what you meant. It's okay.
But then underneath, I don't really use anything. I know a lot of people like to blend but I feel like I get enough out of that when I use the dick mic,
Right.
So.
And what's the kit? So earlier we were talking about it's a CNC.
CNC, yeah. How to make it out of the same shells and the same dimensions and everything as Phil Collins' kit in Genesis, which I loved. Yeah. And I love the sound of on a lot of those records. And so, and how to make it in gold top gold, basically.
Beautiful.
Like a guitar with a very flat finish and very shallow kick, So.
And you've got my favorite thing, the Only You Have It piano. You know what I mean? It's like, I always talk about this. Everybody needs their own piano that's unique, because these days everybody's got the same access to the Steinway grand piano in Vienna concert hall. But what they don't have
is something that sounds like it's
funky
about to fall apart.
Yeah.
I love this thing. It's like
You're a nice player.
It's a late 1800s Steinway upright grand that I bought for literally $1,000.
Right.
I bought it for $1,000 in someone's garage at some rich person's garage in Montecito, California, that was just trying to get rid of it. And my old engineer found it for me on Craigslist. So, and that's been on every record. It's
wonderful.
It's got a heart and soul, that thing, for sure. I never tune it because it just sounds great out of tune. Yeah.
Some nice, some fun stuff over here. I see a little kid xylophone here.
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is just in here and sometimes will get used, but like the keyboard stuff. I mean, mostly the only thing that gets used over here is just the Rhodes, and even some like the little mini DX I'll put on things. But I'll do that over here on my little this is my little workstation for all those keys. I've got all this reface stuff which Yamaha makes, which is great. These are they sound incredible, but I've got them all midied up to this guy and going through a radial keyboard mixer so that I can actually run any of them stereo out. They're always going out stereo out to Pro Tools at all times. And I can also, do the old-fashioned layering of these.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Just with the good old volume controls here, on the mixer. So I can get a really cool synth sound out of this, and then layer in a CP80, here, or a cool organ sound with this. And then there's a million sounds in this if I want to use it too, because this is basically the montage Yamaha. It's basically just every sound they've ever made in one. But it's sometimes a little bit of a bear to go through, and I like stuff to be tactical, so it's I can just grab something and grab a fader or a knob. So that's what's great about having those up here. I know you meant
tactile, but I actually like tactical. It's actually kind of cooler. I might use that from now on.
My third grader education.
No, I know what you meant. It was actually kind of cool.
Cool. But that's pretty much just get sound right away and get something that's keeper, and I love it. And I can flip a switch on this and make this a USB controller for a synth, for all my soft synths inside of there. Because this is all running right now. It's either MIDI or USB, but not both.
Right.
So I can hit a switch and and set it like that. Because I've got a lot of stuff inside the box that I love too, like all the keyscape shit and all that. Sure. There's some really great stuff. All the Arturia stuff is awesome.
The Arturia pianos are so good.
Yeah, they are, and all their recreations of all the new Mellotron and everything are just insane. You can sample with the new Mellotron.
When I first got it, I opened up and I just went to a Yamaha upright and I played it. I was like, this sounds like the best Yamaha upright I've ever heard.
Yeah, man. I mean, people don't know at the end of the day on a record. Yeah. 9 times out of 10, if it's played well, no one's going to know. And if it's in the right context, you can use software versions. There's no rules. I don't think you have to be like this purist,
Yep.
you know,
Agree.
of having
Now,
it.
you have no issues with getting loud enough monitors. I mean, look at that. There's some ATC. And
They're
the other
very
place,
size disproportion to my studio, but
it's great. Yeah, I only ever see these normally in mastering studios. So
I love them. They're great, man. I fell for it. I didn't think I would. I was like, I don't need to fall onto the $20,000 speaker bandwagon. I'm fine with just my equators and whatever. But I had some Proax that I was using and a set of Equator Q12s. And I liked them a lot. But when I heard those, I was like, yeah, these kind of destroy everything to me, I think. So I'm going to put those up. And then, of course, I counter those with a pair of really cheap M-Audio BX5As, which sound extremely good and sound very punchy
great.
and very fun. And, you know, they kind of do the job as far as like not really lying to you, you know? They just kind of tell you what's going on because people are listening on weird shit these days. Like and this is cool. This is my little Klipsch. It's a Klipsch Bluetooth Wi-Fi mono stereo, like mono speaker, amp. And I'll run basically off of one of my separate, externals.
Yep.
For speakers. This is my third speaker selection, so I can actually check it. Like that's how I check it in mono across the room,
That's great.
just to be able to see what's poking out or not. Not that I do a lot of mixing, but it's nice to hear what the track sounds like,
Right.
So put that through there, and that thing sounds awesome.
Great.
The aux I love.
Yeah, I just used one of these for the first time only a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pretty blown away by
I'm
how
blown
good
away
it is.
with it. I love it. Like, I mean, I was always Mr. Romantic, guitar player. I got like in that cabinet, in that box right there is two 212s mic'd up with really nice mics and everything, going through all my best pre's and everything. And I can run every amp straight through this and pull up a cabinet and everything, and it sounds really hard to tell the difference. We used it a lot.
It was really interesting for Universal Audio to even think about this kind of technology.
I know.
And
Well, at first I was like, why are you guys making a load box?
yeah, exactly.
Like, why is UA making a guitar load box? That seems odd. And then it was like, oh, wait, but watch what else it does.
Yeah.
Then you pull up the screen of all the the cabinets and the miking and everything. It's like, that's why you did that.
Yeah, it's really smart.
And it's actually one of the better sounding, standalone load boxes that I've heard. Like, as far as like
I was blown away by
a
it.
Variac
Really.
vibe, like being able to get it to, this is cool. It's a little Bogan Challenger amp that I had modified into a guitar amp. And it sounds nasty. It's fun.
There was a kid who used to work for us, Sam, who took all these Bogners and made, because weren't they for all kind of random things.
PA.
PA and
Yeah, that's a PA. See, microphone.
Right.
But that, plug a guitar in. It sounds awesome, man. Like it just blows the hell up at like from 4 on up and sounds sick.
Great collection of amps here, Princeton.
Now, I got this Princeton 65 Princeton off of a fan had their father had passed away, and he was an avid collector of amazing gear. And they hit me up and said, "Hey, we're going to sell all this stuff off. We have to," and wanted to know if you would be interested in any of it. And so I was like, "I definitely am." So I took the Princeton off of their hands, and also this. Two Rock Emerald Pro, which is apparently a very limited amp. I think they only made about 40 of those heads. And it was their kind of flagship Dumble style amp that springboarded the company, I think.
Brad Whitford was a big fan of these.
Dude, I love that amp.
Yeah.
That amp's amazing. And the cabinet is great too. And then this is a Bad Cat that my buddy John over at Bad Cat made that is just monstrous. This is my new favorite amp I've been having fun with. It's basically kind of all the best parts of an AC30 and a Fender Bassman, blackface Bassman. And he's got this technology that's called K-Master that is a really interesting thing that I hope, for him takes off. He patented it. But the Master literally does work and sound like the amp at 1 as much as it does at like 8 or 9. It's crazy. And it's because of, there's like I can't explain it because I don't know technical shit, but he explained it where it's like they always put the Master after instead of before, or before instead of after certain pentode, triode, whatever things in the some of the shit in there, and it makes it where like when you turn the master up, it makes everybody think those power tubes are really singing.
Right.
But it's apparently not the power tubes. It's something else inside the amp that needs to be driven harder. So he put this somewhere else in the circuitry where like it literally does sound the same when you turn it down. It sounds like you're using this. It sounds like you're using the aux, like a load box.
Wonderful.
And it's pretty dope. So that's a great amp, especially if volume is your enemy, on stages and stuff. So that's fun.
Three Monkeys?
Three Monkeys, yeah, my buddy Greg, he makes these. This is a great amp. I use it all the time. Super fun.
Another amp that Brad Whitford loves.
They were partners.
He was his guitar
He was
tech.
his guitar tech. Yeah, out of Raleigh, North Carolina. One of my favorite dudes ever.
Great.
He used to make my pedal boards and stuff for me.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and anyway, this amp sounds awesome. The cabinet to this, the matching hexagon, the trapezoid or whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's in there.
I see.
And it sounds great. This is an old Mark III Purple Stripe, which is a great sounding Mark III. It's before, I guess, they went circuit board or something on all of those, and when it was supposed to be the successor to the Mark II C+, which was their flagship. That's their like most collectible, desirable, like that's the amp that you're talking, it was, Hetfield and early Metallica and lots of records that had that. This thing's fun. So super beastie, crazy gain amp fun. Goodsell, Richard Goodsell out of Atlanta, amazing amp builder, good buddy. This is called the Labrador. Clearly it's upside down.
I know,
and that's because this is a dummy cab, because it actually came in a combo and I used it as a combo, but the speakers sounded so amazing in the combo, I took the head out and made it the other cabinet in there.
Oh,
and
I see.
And it's got original 65 Bluebell AC30 Vox speakers.
Blue Bulldogs.
They're Silver Bell or whatever.
Oh, is that what they're called? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they're the actual AC30. They're Vox AC30 speakers from a 60s AC30.
Amazing.
And this thing sounds great. This is very close to an AC30 vibe.
That's what I was looking at it, thinking that it came from a combo.
Yeah, it did.
Yep.
And he sent me this just like a dummy box. To keep it in, so I could keep, because I told him, I was like, I like to have all the heads up on the table so I can like actually just patch them in the back to the cabinets, or the aux, which I do a lot of. So, and I'm also a big fan of whatever works and whatever sounds great. So like I'm enjoying using my aux, and I use this a lot too, which is fun. Which is the Helix. It's
great.
The Helix, the Line 6 Helix, which is, man, it's really fun, and it's like the effects in it are incredible. So it's like if I need to get that, like if I need to go super early 80s, like hyper compressed and stereo chorused out, like fun, shit like that. I can go to town in there with that and get great effects, and it's always plugged in, so it's already hardwired always to two channel stereo in Pro Tools. So I can pull it up and get like, I've got some fun presets in there that are just things that would take too long to do with, like by cobbling together all the right pedals, and no one has told me that they didn't think it was a real amp when they've heard it. So
is that Geddy Lee?
That's Geddy Lee. This is his bass preamp, which I love.
I didn't know about this.
It's badass. It's a Sans amp, and
that's amazing.
I've always loved the Sans amp bass preamps, and love them in the studio. So a lot of times we'll run straight into that, and you can get that really like just like aggressive, honky kind of a thing. And it's also great with flat wounds, which is not Geddy's thing. But I find when you run a Mustang bass with flat wounds through at a short scale, the mid range in that thing is powerful, and it ends up getting very like cool SVT, drive on it. And I'll run all that stuff. I'll run all the guitars and the bass into this Radial JD7, which is a beautiful splitter that is a 2 in, like I think 7 out.
I was thinking about getting one of those because we just started putting all my amps together in one big stack, and I was thinking, how am I going to be able to access it? So you like the JD7?
Love it. It's pretty invaluable.
Great.
And it's so versatile because you can like run out of the front of everything into other sources for keyboards or whatever, pedals. And then on the back, it's already hardwired to this tuner, and it's also hardwired out to another output going straight into Pro Tools for DI bass, everything.
So you got a lot of eclectic stuff here, which is fantastic. We were talking about the Sphere off camera earlier, so you've got a 4-channel mic pre's of the Sphere.
Yeah, it's the Fab 4 mic pre's.
I didn't know that existed, so that's really cool to see.
Yeah. This my friend Duncan in Tennessee, in Nashville, he's acquired the company Sphere Consoles.
Fantastic.
And so he's making the pre's, he's making an aftermarket like boutique console.
Oh, beautiful.
And it sounds great. They sound great. They sound like the pre's in my board, which are the same family, which is the Quad 8, 2082. All that Sphere.
I love the EQs with the kind of switches on them.
Yeah,
those were amazing.
Yeah. So this is great. It's just straight pre, and I'm using those for one. I'm using 2 of them for the stereo keyboard out, and then 2 of them for the piano, which is for the Steinway. And then those are going into corrective EQs over here, the Neves, and then it's like a bunch of random stuff, I guess. I don't really use a ton of outboard gear. As you can see, this is not a lot of outboard gear. I know for people with home studios, they'd be like, yeah, that's a lot of gear. But, you look at the big studios and everybody's like, oh, this is sort of a letdown. I don't really have a lot of shit. But I don't really use a lot going in. I'm kind of like, know what I like and know what I want it to sound like. And when I get it in there, I can manipulate it a million ways to Sunday.
Well, you've got a lot of nice flavors here.
I've got my Neve stuff and I've got my Chandler stuff, which is basically like the EMI stuff.
Yep.
And I have a rack of stuff out in the garage too that I have not implemented of my outboard gear from Nashville, from my studio that I had there.
We can move to the console though, because of course you've got a ton of nice pre's on here as well.
That's the brains of the operation, because everything there is pretty much being used. All 20 channels are being used for for recording. And I love that purist thing of being able to just like have everything mic'd up and going through the console, then straight to tape tools, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
It's just kind of nice to utilize the console for what it is, which is, it's pre's. I'm not using it for its monitor section or anything like that. So
is this for Dr. Pat?
Yeah, the steel.
The steel.
Yeah, I don't remember who was the steel player on that, but probably, it could be Dr. Pat.
So give us a little bit of history of this console. Where did it come from?
Yeah, this console came from, it came out of originally Village Recorder, and this is the exact console. I've seen a couple of them for sale lately where they'll like say it's the same console that Steely Dan used on Countdown to Ecstasy, and on the back cover I'm like, well, that is the console from the back cover.
Yep.
I've got it documented all the way back, but this was the console that was in the room at Village Recorder, ironically a couple of miles up the road from here, that it lived in 1972 when it was installed. And it's a 1972 Quad 8 2082, which is a 8-bus console with 20 inputs and a 2 mix bus, and been modified on the monitor section to not be 16 but 24 stereo channel jukebox, which I don't use any of it.
Right.
I did, but I don't now, just from shit changing over the years. But what I do is I use it for the pre's and I use it for the bussing, because the buses all sound incredibly great on it too. Everything's all the same, transformers on all of that. So for, grouping kicks and snares and all that, and using it for the outputs there. Plus I use bussing if I want to bus to my 4-track. I have the 4-track coming up on groups 1, 2, 3, and 4 going in there. So I can record through the console going to the 244,
nice.
which is cheating, because everything sounds great going through that console before it hits that Tascam.
Amazing.
So it's kind of like you're already giving your tracks some steroids.
I mean, it's interesting. You got the Quad 8, the 244, and then it's like huge speakers. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's very America. All the classes
love it.
Are like right here.
I love it.
And so that's kind of what I'm. That's the bread and butter right there. Is that console for me.
I got to try one of these out at Clay Studio last year. And pretty impressive.
The Red 47.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's pretty impressive.
Great. It's a monster, man. I mean, I've had real 47s and this thing has been amazing. The fact that it's got the mic, the mic pre built in it, it's pretty great. You just and the mic pre sounds awesome.
Yep.
So
and that little extra drive is pretty nice.
The drive is great. It's great on vocals too. I mean, I use it for the vocals, but it's off right now because I'm doing something a little more subtle recording. But it's super fun. You just crank it and send it through a compressor and done.
This is fantastic. So at the moment you're doing an acoustic vocal album.
I'm doing an acoustic vocal record, and it's
your own solo one.
Yeah, it's actually it's the flip side to the other record that I have that's going to be coming out at the same time. That's this big, massive, slick, hi-fi produced, kind of early '80s vibe of a record.
I want to hear that. You're some of my favorite production periods. So.
It's fun. Then you'll dig it. I was definitely channeling our favorites, and then this is going to be this will be the lyrical version of the record. This will be there'll be another record that will be out that will just be all basically vocal and guitar.
So this is the Nebraska side of the Born in the USA.
That's
side.
right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and I'm using this is the FET 13, I think, is the Soyuz that I'm using on acoustic with a hyper cardioid capsule. It's got interchangeable capsules on it.
Wonderful.
So that way that it rejects the vocal amazingly for acoustic guitar, because that's the problem, man. You know the deal. Mm-hmm. That's been my fight forever, is getting something phase coherent when cutting a vocal and a guitar with two mics, and the bleed and the amount of EQing and things you have to do to each one, sure. And it's all playing together.
Yeah. And the more work you do in post, the worse it always. The
worse it
gets.
It gets phazier and weirder.
Yeah.
This is great. This thing picks up almost zero vocal, which is wild. When you're singing right here. So I just tilt this up a little bit just to keep that to reject a little bit of the acoustic as well.
Great.
So
really nice. And that makes sense not to have the driving, because otherwise it would probably bring in some of the background.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes that mic set to stun.
Gorgeous. This is presumably a vocal booth.
That's the pain cave. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it's not much of a vocal booth. It's just a place that we can stick insecure singers when they don't want to be seen. But
sure.
But also, it's also just when we're tracking live in here, you can stick a singer in there with an acoustic guitar, DI'd.
Right.
And we're able to give the comfort to the rest of the band that the singer's singing along in the room and they can hear it. And
wonderful.
9 times out of 10, we'll go back and recut the vocal though, because that's the perils of a one-room setup. Is if you want the vocal to be a certain amount of compression on it, it's going to suck everything else in with it. But that seems to fight off a lot of it, even though it's pretty simple. It's literally like a bed mattress box spring on top of 3 gobos. So
nice.
Yeah, that's some
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Engineering by Todd
Yeah,
Stapera.
I like that. Yeah. So is this like your global overall room mic when you're doing drums and everything?
It is. I actually was using it as my overhead for a long time, and it works great as an overhead stereo, image of the drums, and being 70-80% of the drum sound. It just doesn't work on certain drummers and certain drum kits. I feel like if it starts getting too splashy and too splatty, it doesn't work for me, just because it's a ribbon. But what I did is I swapped it to being my stereo room mic now, and I have a new love for it, because it's
Great.
just it marries this room, the size of this room, perfect, and I get a great stereo image out of it. So I'm enjoying it, and I'm using it right now for even just recording this acoustic vocal thing as the stereo image, and it's like putting a widener on it, but without using a plug-in or whatever. It's an actual microphone.
That's wonderful.
Because this room doesn't have a lot of ambience, so it's when you hear it, it just actually adds width and depth when you blend it in, as opposed to adding a bunch of verb, and ambience. So I love it.
Great. And we love AEA. Wes is a great guy. And,
yeah, man, he makes great stuff.
Great stuff. The R88, the Mark II. So thank you ever so much, Butch.
Thanks for coming by, man.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you and pleasure to talk. Thanks for putting up with all of my shit here and my rambling.
No, I mean, if you ever have a few down days and I could just come in and borrow your studio.
Anytime you want. Anytime you want. I'll give you the keys and the code.
You hear that, everybody? Yeah. Thanks ever so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Please leave a bunch of comments and questions below. Have a marvelous time recording, and we'll see you again soon.